Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I'm loving the energy that we're bringing into this session, and I'm really excited to dive into this event for us all to learn about how to level up our company's business development. A core goal of Dreamers and Doers is to amplify you and your journeys, and intimate educational sessions like today's, filled with insights thanks to your fellow members, are the perfect opportunity for us to up-level together. So before we officially begin, I want to share a bit of background information on our esteemed expert. Melissa is a strategic growth consultant and business coach for agencies. She has worked agency side as a business development leader for more than 12 years, from a global advertising network to a growing independent branding agency, going from startup to established player. She found her path in business development early on, combining her strong strategic point of view with a natural business intuition. For the majority of her career, Melissa played the role of intrapreneur, building a business development and growth program from the ground up. During that time, she worked alongside founders, business leaders, and marketers to unpack their business challenges and architect a path forward. Today, Melissa is an intrapreneur turned entrepreneur, and she runs a consulting business that accelerates growth for agencies when they need it most, whether startup, scale up, or established. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Melissa. We are so excited to learn from your expertise today. We know how valuable your time is, and we're so grateful to you for investing in the Dreamers and Doers Collective in this way.
Oh, thank you so much, Hannah, and thanks everyone for joining today. I'm sure you're all busy, and if you're like me, when you join these sessions, you're probably eating lunch or multitasking. So just want to let you know I'm super grateful for you giving me your time today. I'm just gonna get my presentation up. Okay. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of background on me. Hannah, thank you for sharing that far too long of a bio. But I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background on me as a person and how I got to doing what I do today. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, and then we'll spend whatever remaining time we have for Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll circle back to those at the end. So I'm Melissa. I'm the founder of Waverly Ave Consulting. Some fun facts about me. I'm born and raised in New York. I've made my way all the way around New York, born in Queens, grew up in Long Island, lived in Manhattan for many years. I now live in Westchester, so I'm kind of getting a full tour of all areas of New York. But I am headed to LA tomorrow, Hannah. So hopefully the weather clears up for when I'm in town. I'm a dog mom, proud dog mom of a rescue dog, Nola. She's 10 years old, and she is really the boss of my life most days. I'm an 80s baby and 90s kid, so you know I'll always love spandex, big scrunchies, and Mariah Carey. So if anyone else is in that camp, if you know, you know. So how I got to where I got to today, I'm your classic overachiever and a recovering perfectionist. I'm sure I'm not alone in this group of founders. And after many years of sprinting towards new mile markers I set for myself, I was really burnt out and feeling unfulfilled. And as someone who puts their full heart and passion into everything I do, I knew I couldn't really stay in that place for too long. So about 9 months ago, I took a chance. I left behind a role that I worked really hard to earn at a company I'd been with for over 10 years, and I had no plan at all. Looking back, I don't even know how I made that decision. It was just sort of a decision that came to me, and I knew it was the right one. And I took about a month off and decided to start a business grounded in my passion and strengths. I really wanted to leave behind the toxicity of hustle culture and perfectionism that I sort of grew my career in the creative agency space. I wanted to build a business around a commitment to my own health and happiness and success. And so everything I built my business around was based on that. So I set working hours that gave me balance. I created rates that I felt were fair and reflective of my experience and my worth. And I set limits on how many clients I would take on at once. And because of that, I'm so much better for it, much happier than I was a year ago. So today I'm a fractional business development partner and coach for creative agencies. I say I bring an uncomplicated approach because business development doesn't have to be complicated. There's a lot of mixed messages out there. It can be, it's actually quite simple, and you'll see when we go through some things today that it can be. And the other thing I wanted to mention, a lot of the content today is based around service-based businesses. So if you're not a creative agency, a lot of these principles will apply. So don't worry that this is just for agencies. But of course, I know there's some agencies here, so hopefully it'll be extra helpful for you. I say I'm anything but a typical slick and salesy business development person because there's a lot of common misconceptions around business development. A lot of the founders I work with say, I'm not good at networking, I'm not great at selling, I'm not an extrovert. But these are all stereotypes that just create a resistance towards owning business development as a founder. And while I'm a great partner to bring in, I'm not an outsourced solution. I don't really believe in outsourcing business development, especially if you're a founder-led business. You want to attract clients that connect with you and your business personally, not with a sales rep or a business development rep. So getting comfortable with the term business development and making it a part of your everyday is really important in terms of building a business. Some of the principles that are part of my approach and part of my business are relationships built on trust. People hire people they know, like, and trust. So trust is really important, and it makes it really hard for your competitors to take a client away once that trust is there. Quality over quantity. So better results come from a more thoughtful and personal approach when it comes to business development. If you're going for volume and reaching out to 20 or 30 people a week, you're probably going to have a pretty low return rate. You're much better off sending 5 thoughtful, personalized messages. And I think all of us likely get hit with that spam every day. We can spot those mass messages. So quality is really important. And then the third most important and often forgotten one is you have to be in it for the long game. Results don't happen overnight, and you have to set your expectation. Business development happens in cycles, and there's also a lot of unpredictable factors that have nothing to do with you, be it economic conditions or things that are happening in an industry. So you want to be constantly, and we're going to talk about consistency later on, but you want to constantly be doing and feeding your business development machine to make sure you're consistently having leads come in. So that's a little bit of background. Now we're going to dive into the 3 steps to level up your business development. The first thing I wanted to start with is a definition on business development, because I think there's often, it's a big word and it can mean a lot of different things. The way I define it is the process of pursuing strategic opportunities for a business, cultivating relationships, finding matches between your services and clients, and actively creating opportunities to increase revenue. So often people will associate business development with sales, but sales is the final stage of business development as a process. It's the close, it's the very end. And if that's the one piece you're putting effort into, you're probably struggling with your close rate because you're going straight to the sell and you haven't built the relationship yet. So everything that comes before that final close is relationship building that you should be doing through a combination of outbound and inbound, and we'll talk a little bit more about tactics later on. But you want to go into business development knowing that these relationships could take a year or more to build. And you may feel that your efforts are invisible, but if you're building relationships, you're giving people the opportunity to get to know you, to like you, to trust you. And when they get to that sell point, your job becomes a lot easier because they already want to work with you. So I really want you to reframe any perceptions you have of business development from sales to relationships. So I'm going to walk you through some of the common tools I use with my clients in the beginning stages. This helps create focus and then make sure we're connecting with clients in the best way. So we're going to start talking about creating a focused target client, which a lot of businesses struggle with. Then we'll go into your company's niche positioning and how you can stand out and differentiate in your industry. And then lastly, creating a long-term sustainable program. And this is meant for small teams that don't have a business development team. You might, if you're a team of one, you're probably doing this on your own. And that's what a lot of what we're going to talk about today is actually built for. So starting with a focused target client, a lot of my clients get uncomfortable committing to a focused target. They worry that they're going to alienate or not attract other types of clients. But remember, this is your ideal client. So the more specific we can be, the more effective your content will be. You'll be speaking directly to a specific audience. You'll be more personalized in your conversations. And the better our services, we'll know what services need to serve that audience as well. And it doesn't mean you won't work with people outside of this, but we really want to get clear on who we're looking to attract and engage with on a daily basis for our business. So some of the questions I would typically ask is, who is this person you're going after? What's their title? What industry are they in? How many years of experience, if that matters? What is their business? How big is their company? Are they at a certain stage of maturity? Is there a certain revenue threshold that they tend to be at? What's their background? Is there a certain education or skill set or communities they're part of? How do they think? What are some of the personality traits that define them, their beliefs and needs? What are some of their goals and aspirations? And what do they need most? What are the pain points they're dealing with every day? What are their frustrations? And I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of my target audience who I speak to, just so you get a sense of the specificity that I'm looking for. So on my coaching offer, I'm typically working with female founders. They own a creative agency in an earlier stage, less than 10 employees. Their revenue tends to be between 250K and $1 million. They're part of entrepreneur communities like Dreamers and Doers. They tend to be ambitious and optimistic. She struggles to manage her time running an agency and also doing business development, but she wants to double her revenue. So a lot of this comes from the more you talk to your target audience, the more you learn about them and understand the things that are in common across this audience, but this makes it super clear, and I can design a product or a service directly for her because I know, who she is, what she struggles with, and how I can support her. On the other end of the spectrum, for my consulting offer, I'm typically working with a founder or a managing director of a creative agency. They're independent or founder-led. They've been in business for 10 to 20 years, less than 50 employees. Their revenue tends to be between 2 million and 10 million. They have a portfolio of reputable work, also ambitious and optimistic, also struggles to manage their time. And the one of the big differences with them is they've built a business. So a lot of their business development has come from referrals, but maybe it's slowed down. And they now need a better way to attract consistent leads or diversify the work they're getting to future-proof the business. So you can see the level of specificity when you're thinking about your target client. With this, having this defined, you'll be much more effective as I said earlier, in building relationships and closing clients, you'll be able to speak more directly to this audience, and you'll be able to consistently get insights the more you speak with them, so you can become a specialist. So the next thing we'll get into is niche positioning. So I'm sure many of you are in very crowded and competitive industries. I created a simple formula that works really well for my clients. The creative agency space specifically is highly competitive. There's about 88,000 creative agencies in the US, according to IBIS World. So it's a very crowded space. And a lot of agencies say the same thing. And if you're in the service-based industry, you're probably facing this as well. So this formula is meant to help agencies or businesses like you create a very defined point of view, personality, and purview that helps you differentiate against your competitors and not necessarily fall into the trap of looking at your competitors and just putting your own spin on what they're saying. So I'm going to break this down step by step. Starting with personality, there's something inherent to you that makes you unique. Are you funny? Are you serious? Are you down to earth? Are you formal? What's your style? Do you wear suits? Do you wear jeans and a sweatshirt? Own the personality that is unique to you. This is something that will connect with your ideal client and will inform the way you show up, the way you talk, the way you tell stories. So we really want to get clear, and it also makes you really memorable because there's only one of you. So the personality piece won't be for everyone. I'm definitely not for everyone, but I also know that my ideal client is looking for someone like me who doesn't talk jargon, who doesn't make things complicated, who doesn't overpromise. So really lean into the personality traits that make you unique. Then we want to layer on your point of view. So all of you are founders, you have a perspective or you wouldn't be in business. Articulating how you see the world and what values and beliefs you have that inform your decision making is really important. We don't spend enough time sharing this with our audience, and this is really what people latch onto and connect with if they have similar or relatable stories. So I spent a little bit of time early on talking about burnout culture, perfectionism, that tends to really connect with people who experience the same thing. So a lot of the founders I work with have a very similar story or can relate to that story. So sharing that point of view is really important. And then lastly, purview. So as a business, you can't do everything. You really want to own your specific area of expertise. Mine's business development for creative agencies. Find your expertise and don't overcommit or feel pressure to do too many things just because you're asked to do them or just because you can. Really double down on the things you love that you're really good at. And this is where it becomes a niche in combination with your personality and point of view. So I'm going to show you an example so you can see what that looks like when you bring these things together. This is one of my clients, Little Sunday Studio. They're an early stage female founded creative agency. They're also part of Dreamers and Doers. So if you're interested in connecting with them, reach out. But I wanted to highlight them because they do a really great job of combining these three things. Personality, you definitely get a sense from their brand look and feel and the way they express themselves. They're playful, they're fun, they're not too formal, they're bold. Point of view, you see that they are founded and led by women, and they tell you in their dream statement that what matters to most to them is family. So you get a really clear sense of their view on the world. And then purview, they say what they do really well: branding, packaging, strategy, innovation. So right away, you know who they are, you know what makes them different. So when we think about for them, their competitive set, there are thousands of agencies that do the same services they do. But it would be probably really hard to find an agency that has the same exact personality, point of view, and purview combined like they do. So by doing this, they've made their competitive set very small and they become a standout. So you can see why niche positioning is really important to business development. It makes your job in selling, it takes away the, breaking it down, looking at the numbers specifically, this agency is cheaper than that one, or this service provider is cheaper than that one. It really makes it more about who you connect with, beyond that nitty gritty. And before we go into the last one, I wanted to pause on these two because the combination of these two is really important. And there's a reason why they're the first two steps. Your close rate is an indication of how well your positioning aligns with your target client. So if you're having trouble closing, you're either targeting the wrong audience, or you're not being specific enough about the audience you're going after, or your services may not be the right fit for that audience, which doesn't mean you need to offer completely different services. It could be the way you're framing them up, or the way you're offering them. So think about that combination. I always say when it comes to close rate, you want to be over 65%. And there can be a lot of factors involved in close rate, but the reason you want to be over 65% is that means you're speaking to the right people. So you have a good filter for who's a good fit for you and who isn't. You're not wasting time on bad fit leads. You have the right offer, something they need and want, and you're the right fit. The personality and point of view is connecting with them. So most people want to focus on the tactics and the execution, but a lot of the challenges with business development comes in these first two steps and getting this combination right. So for the last thing I want to cover, I wanted to talk about building a sustainable program. And I think when it comes to business development, people ask me a lot for the secret or the hack or the new way of doing it. And to be a buzzkill, there's really no secret or hack. There's obviously always new things you can experiment with, but the truth is it really comes down to two things: consistency and authenticity. When we talk about consistently, it means consistently making time to do business development, not when it's convenient, not when you had a slow week, not when suddenly, your pipeline is low and you need to do some activity. You need to always be doing business development. One of the things I always say to my clients is whatever you're experiencing right now in your business, your revenue, your sales, it tends to be the result of the past 6 months of activity. So what have you been doing over the past 6 months that led you to what you're experiencing right now? And just kind of reflect honestly on, have I been consistently doing business development? Because as we said earlier, there's always going to be periods of things you can't control, economic moments, but if you're consistently doing business development, it will always pay off and you'll always be filling your pipeline with leads consistently. So when I work with founders to get to consistency, we talk about leaning into your strengths and leaning into what you're good at, what you're confident in. There's really not a one-size-fits-all program, and there's no magic tactics. You really have to put the work in, but I always encourage my clients to lean into the things that they enjoy. So if you're a great writer, write content, and you can start small. You can start with social posts, and then you can eventually maybe do a longer form email newsletter or article on LinkedIn. Then maybe you do an interview, then maybe a byline. So work your way up to what feels comfortable, but whatever you do, you have to be consistent, and it is cumulative. So each activity you do builds on itself. The more you can kind of stick to doing the things you enjoy, the more likely you'll be consistent. So this is just an example of things, but really lean into if you're great at networking, go to conferences, join communities, be active. If you're great at presenting, participate on podcasts, find speaking engagements, do the things that really you enjoy so it doesn't feel like an extra job. And then you can be consistent. The second piece is authenticity. And And I want to start with a quote from a book that that I loved, called Rare Breed. It was written by two creative agency female founders. And the quote is, "The things that make us different that other people consider to be weaknesses or vices can in fact be the sources of our greatest strength." So I think this speaks a lot to authenticity, because there's a lot of noise and pressure and expectations that we have to be like a competitor, or we assume our competitors have it all figured out, but their business might not be doing that well just because it looks like it is. So I really encourage my clients to really lean into the things that actually make them different and show up authentically as themselves, even if that's not what's typical. So when you combine those two things, consistency and authenticity, you'll be able to create a sustainable program, because you're not doing things outside of yourself, and you're not doing things that you're not good at. You're doing things you enjoy, and that should always pay back in a consistent flow of leads and new client opportunities. So before we get into Q&A, I'm just going to really quickly talk about how I work with creative agencies, in case there's anyone on here who's interested in learning a little bit more. I have a coaching offer, which is a do it with you service, where we work together side by side. That's for my earlier stage founders. We basically cover a lot of the things we talked about today. And then we work side by side to help build your business development program and pipeline. Consulting is for my independent and further along founder-led agencies that are looking for a fractional head of growth. I come in and lead that in partnership with the team at the agency. And then lastly, I do a lot of intensives and power strategy sessions. Could be for a specific moment. You lost your biggest client and you need some help getting, ideas, or getting a plan in place, or you have a strategy, but you don't know how to execute it. I will come in and help create a clear roadmap and 90-day plan. So people use those in different ways. And that's about it. So this last piece is just a open Q&A, and I'm happy to, if people want to pop on and share a little bit about their challenges, we can talk through it live. And I'm sure that many of you have the same, there's very common business development challenges. So don't be shy. And I'll leave this up. This is just my information. If anyone wants to reach out after for a specific question, or if you want to have a chat, I'm happy to talk one-on-one.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Melissa. This was so great. And thank you for leaving all of your socials up and how everyone can contact you. Like Melissa was saying, if you have any questions, feel free to hop off mute. You don't have to hop off video if you don't want to, but we'd love to hear what questions you have.
Hi, I'll ask a question.
Hello, Teresa.
Hi, Hannah. Hi, Melissa.
Hi,
Melissa,
Teresa.
thank you so much for this. It felt like a little snack of insight on business development. And I feel like I want the full meal. I have a business I started in July. And I think of myself and a lot of my other co-founders that I've sort of developed network relationships with are sort of struggling with, once you feel like you've been put in contact either through referral or you meet somebody in networking, sort of taking that, transitioning from the initial meet, okay, now, we've developed, we're starting to develop a good relationship, and sort of moving from the proposal to the agreement and kind of getting things kicked off. So do you have any success steps or ideas on how to, number one, more successfully move that into a sold, the sold column? And B, if, you're getting the, oh, we decided to go in another direction, like my approach is I just keep following up. I just keep, how has it been going with what you've decided? Or, is there anything, besides, like, I'll send articles directly, hey, I thought of you. Any other like good tidbits that you've found particularly successful?
Yeah. Great question, and definitely have a lot of experience with this. So I guess my first question on those referrals and new relationships you're, getting to the proposal stage with, are you asking, it sounds like you build a good connection, or you wouldn't be getting to that point, but are you asking them questions around where they are in their stage of the process? Are they speaking to other partners? How quickly they're looking to move forward? Things like that.
Yeah, I think I would say my instinct is to say yes. I'm sure I could be validating that more, through process. If you start with meeting 1 or 2, like, we're looking to make this decision in the next month, then meeting 3, are we still looking at the right time frame, at the same time frame? Has anything changed? Those sort of qualifying questions.
Okay. Because I want to make sure that some people jump to proposal really quickly and don't let the lead kind of tell you when they're ready to make the decision. So we might be making assumptions that they're ready to make a decision when they're still shopping or still processing if this is something they need or not. So that's just one thought. I would say, if you're consistently if they're consistently saying, hey, we decided to go in another direction. If you don't, I would encourage you to ask for a call and get on the phone. And especially if you had a great connection, understand where things didn't line up for them. Was it, if it's price, it's not necessarily indicative that you have to drop your price. It's just that your offer wasn't the price value equation wasn't there. So I think understanding, or was it the experience or the other partner, we just had better chemistry. When it comes to the creative agency space, clients tend to choose, the number one reason they choose agencies is chemistry above all. They'll say, we didn't choose you because of price, but at the end of the day, price isn't the reason they're hiring people. They're hiring people because of the chemistry they feel. So I think sometimes we have to kind of dig a little bit deeper and understand what the psychology process was in terms of their decision and why they didn't choose us. And then back to what I kind of said earlier, if you're having trouble with your close rate, reflect on, are we targeting the right group of people? Are we being specific enough in saying who we're going after? And let's reflect on your positioning. Are you standing out and differentiated enough against your competition? And is that connecting well with your target? So I think those are the two things I would reflect on. In terms of the after, you're doing all the right things, sending articles, keeping in touch. I think that's often people forget to do that, and they may hire someone and have a bad experience. So you being there and showing that you actually care and are invested in their business is great. So I would keep doing that. And if you're doing that through email, find other ways to stay on their radar through social media, share things with them through there, or like their posts, engage with their content, so that you're kind of present in a lot of different places for them.
I love that, Melissa. Thank you. I think the other thing is maybe addressing, like, I'm curious in maybe even following up with some of the clients that they haven't necessarily, like, from what I understand. So let's say I've had five opportunities, I closed 2, and I have 3 that I didn't. And that's been in the past 7 months. So the 3 that I didn't, it's like one of them decided to go, with somebody that was a virtual, a venture capital firm, and they were buying the company, and they initially thought they were going to go outside, and then they just decided to keep the person they had. The second one was like, we need support on this on a project basis. And then the other, I think the person who I was talking to, this speaks to, are you talking to the right people? Do you have the right people in the room in alignment? Like, it was like the person I was speaking to was really on board, but you could tell she was fighting an uphill battle with other executives to actually believe the validity of the product. So that's that one. And so it's this sort of like, I don't know that I feel like it's like, oh, I keep losing out to these other consultants. It's more like either they're seeing the price and they're like, oh shit, I had no idea that that's what it costs to do something like that.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, by the way.
No, that's okay. I think don't necessarily write those people off. They may come back a year from now or 6 months from now. I don't know what just happened. So don't write those people off, especially if you had a good connection. I think the other thing is, I wouldn't necessarily give them everything up front, like just be a little bit savvier around where people are. And, if you're getting signals that they don't have buy-in yet, then just say, hey, I'm just going to send you an overview for now. When you guys are ready, that will position you as a little bit more of a confident seller. And then you won't waste your time in building a proposal for someone who hasn't gotten buy-in. So I would kind of like spoon feed them things as they're ready. And if they're reaching back out to you, just give them a little bit of space. If they reach back out to you and they're like, hey, I'd love a little bit more, then great, give them a little bit more. But if not, just keep in touch with them. But I would say, don't let those situations get you down. Just make sure you're investing the right amount of time for how much they're investing in you, for how interested they are in you, and kind of stay in tune with that if you can.
Super appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you, Teresa, for the great question. Willow, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi. I have a quick question. Well, I mean, so many questions. Where do I start? The first one is you talk a lot about founder-led sales being really important. Definitely agree with that. But I'm curious, you built your career being kind of this lead sales individual within an organization. Do you still recommend hiring someone like yourself to build a sales organization, given the recommendation?
Yeah. So I think at a certain size, if you're in the more established camp, like you guys are, Willow, I definitely think having someone in-house to support the system, the role I always played, and this just was kind of came naturally to me, but worked really well for our business, was I was always putting the founders out there, building our founder brand, and knowing what role and what asset they played to me as the business development lead. I was there to kind of make sure the process ran smoothly, make sure that we were not forgetting leads, we were tracking through our CRM, we were asking the right questions up front, some of the things I was just sharing with Teresa to vet these leads, but the founders still played a very active role in the process. So I think when you get to a certain size, having someone to support and make sure you can keep up with that consistency, because your time is so widely spread, but you still, as a founder, need to be playing a key role in that process. And I say that with all my clients, even if I'm on the consulting side and I'm leading stuff, you can't outsource biz dev and be like, hey, just call me when you have all our leads. Like, it just doesn't, it's not going to be successful, and you're not going to get the right clients. So having a support system, yes. Having a, someone dedicated in-house to support you, yes. Or a fractional solution like me. But yes, I think, and your role could change in biz dev. What the role you play in the beginning is going to be, you're going to be doing it all. And then as your business grows, you're going to play a different role that's based around your biggest strengths as a founder and what what clients naturally connect with. So one of the founders I worked with was really good. If I could get her in early on, like the rest of the closing that deal was so easy for me. the other founder, like he would make it really complicated. So we would just not bring him into the process until later on. So I think it's understanding the founder personalities and strengths and how you can use those to your advantage in the business development process. Or you defining what role you want to play and then where you need supplemental support.
Got it. Okay, that's super helpful. And then just one other question around pitching. So, or I guess kind of RFPs.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how much work do you think is too much work to go into a pitch? So a lot of times it'll be, you know, they want like fully built out concepts or something, or maybe they didn't ask for that, but you think that it's the way to sell in a project. I'm curious what your thought is there. I know that you mentioned, what did you say? You were mentioning if you kind of give too much, it might devalue the work also.
Yeah. I think this is a tricky art when it comes to pitching, and there's a lot of factors. It depends on how big the opportunity is that you're pitching, what chance you have. A lot of RFPs and pitches are not level playing ground. Often the client knows who they want to work with and can be an exercise for procurement. So I think you want to get, and there's always red flags of those things early on. Like if they're not giving you one-on-one time to ask questions about the RFP, how much interest are they showing in you as an agency? So I think these are things to look out for. If there is a lot of interest and if it feels like a really fair RFP, if it's a big opportunity to work with a brand you wouldn't otherwise have access to, then yes, it's worth investing. I always say set a budget before going in to manage your team's time. And just because they're asking for spec work or, you know, something, you don't necessarily have to do it. That's not what always wins the pitch. And I think understanding from the more you can get to know the client up front and what they care about, are they more focused on results and therefore seeing case studies where you've done work like this and you have proven results is more important. It's all about where you invest your time, but make sure you really understand the decision makers on the other side and what they care most about. And then, you know, use your discretion as to what the best strategy would be to win that client over. But I don't think doing free work is always the answer. And that also sometimes is a philosophy of the agency. So you can, you know, that's a decision you have to make. But yeah, I would say make sure the interest is there, make sure you understand what's motivating the client, and then manage a budget so that you're not spending too much time chasing opportunities, and, you know, taking time away from the paying clients that you have.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amazing. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Willow. Anyone has any other questions? Feel free to hop right in. In the meantime, I did want to share a couple of quick forms with you all. So the first one is our events feedback form. So we'd love to hear what you thought of today's session. If you have any ideas for future sessions, your feedback is super valuable to us. So I just shared that in the chat. And then, okay, Tiffany, I see you have your hand raised. Feel free to hop right in.
Oh, you're on mute, Tiffany.
Sorry, it's showing my video and not my audio. It's been a day. But I own a creative agency. So I do live in Norway, but my twin sister lives in the US. So we serve clients in both places. Probably the biggest issue that I come into is a client is like wanting, like saying that they want everything, right? Like, and because we're a full service agency. And so I feel like the proposals get to be like so much information that it becomes like really overwhelming, and it's just like where to start. And I like, well, like in the email, it's like, I know this is a lot of information, like we can definitely game plan, but like, I don't know if I'm not putting in like enough work and like mapping out like a game plan of like, here's what I would recommend as first steps, second steps, third steps, because they're saying they want all the things right now, you know, but then it gets shocking.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, this is a very common thing. I would say step into that with them, like start with a very high level so you can make sure that they're on the same page. And even, I always say bring up numbers up front. So they're saying they want everything, give them a bit of a ballpark, like just to give you an idea. If we do all of this, it's in the ballparks of X to X. Is that in line with your thinking? Because some of these clients may not have ever worked with an agency, may not know the cost of services like yours. And then you can work through that with them. If they say, actually, I only have X, you can say, well, what I would recommend, and be more of a leader and a partner in that sense and helping them navigate the space. So, or you may say, it sounds like from our conversations, these two things are a priority. You may want to do all of this stuff down the road, but I would recommend we start here. So I think navigating that with them up front, knowing that this is a common thing that clients get overwhelmed later. So I think you can do that up front and then step them into it. Start with like a 1-page overview. If they were to get the whole thing, this is generally what like the roadmap would look like. Align with them there. Does that feel good before you get into all the detail, breaking that down? Because I'm sure that's a big investment of your time to capture everything, and kind of step them into it to make sure they're feeling comfortable along the way and you're not getting to the end and there's sticker shock or overwhelm with the process. If that helps. And if that stuff you're doing already, let me know and I can see if there's other things we can solve here. But I would say, I think that should help you just earlier, communicating earlier on what they can expect. So there's less of a surprise.
Yeah. And like in the call, because normally it's like, it's like a 15 or 30-minute call, but sometimes it goes into like an hour because it's just like what they called for completely changes. And so I try to like guide them, okay, well, this is a completely different aspect, this is what you're asking for. So sometimes I'm like, here's what you've asked for, but like, here's also my recommendation. But then I still feel like it's still like, because they're reading through this like 20-page proposal, because we go into details, like
that's a little too long, I would say, until a client knows they want to work with you. You can get to that level of detail once there's an SOW if you need to, and you may be able to reduce the detail there. But I would say when someone's just deciding whether or not you're a good fit, keep it really simple. Like keep your proposals less than, in terms of the process, less than 5 pages, because it can be very overwhelming to navigate that. And you want to just think of it, you may need something really detailed for your team or internally, but think about what are the things the client needs to know first and foremost. And I think there's probably a way to simplify the steps you're mapping out for the client. They don't need to know all the sausage making, but they probably need to know the steps that they're going to navigate through, or when they're going to touch base with you in that process, and what the deliverables are at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's not like 20 pages of just like words, it's like also examples and stuff like that. But it's really like the medical providers that get kind of stuck in that phase, because the proposal with the examples works really well for like other service providers, because they're like, oh, okay, I've seen you work with this before, but then so with that audience, you may need to test out some different things to see what works better for them, since they're a slightly different audience to your audience. The other thing, if you're not doing it, I would start maybe having a call where you walk them through it, so that if there's overwhelm of them navigating it themselves, set up time to actually go through it with them to make sure they can ask you questions, and you can simplify it by taking them through it. So that way. And that's what I try to do. Like, I'm like, let's set up another call. But I guess I'll just have to play around with it and like shorten it, and just like, because it is it's not my like ideal client, it's just like based off of like a connection that they're like, oh, I've seen you do this before. Can we work with you? So it's more of like a very warm lead and not just like coming off cold.
Yeah. Well, maybe to verify that they're, if there's a learning curve for them, this isn't something they've done before, you might be able to have like a standard thing you send them that just says, here's a little bit more about what the process looks like before I put anything together tailored for you. Take a look at this. So that might be a way to also step into it without you investing too much time.
Mhm.
But the other trick I have is if it's a proposal that needs to be walked through live, don't send it and then ask for a call. Say, I have a proposal ready. I'd love to walk you through it. When can we have a call? And hold on
Oh,
to
that's
it
a really good idea.
before you send it. Because once you send it, they're just going to be like, I'll just read it myself. So
Yeah.
wait till you have a call before you share it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for your question, Tiffany. And Morgan also dropped a little hack in the chat as well about creating a loom of the proposal and sending it over. So that's a great idea as well.
I love that idea, Morgan. That's a great idea. I've had agencies use Loom, and that's a great option too if you can't get on a live call. I always prefer live calls, so there can be, again, you're using that as an opportunity to build a relationship with a client, but depending on the industry and what you're doing, Loom's a great alternative.
All right, we have time potentially for one more question.
Great.
Michelle, I just see you hopped off mute.
Great. This has been really good. I am Michelle Hayward. I'm in the midst of, I have a DEI software and diversity, equity, inclusion software and services startup. And what I'm doing right now is, after a while, you get tuned in to who your best customers are. And so you were going through the identifiers of the idea client, and you went through all of these questions. Once we go through that, and we really hone in, like you said something like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Like, what are their members of? I'm like, oh, they're members of the engineering orgs and
Yeah.
and things like, what are we doing with that information? Are we just, can you talk through the things that we need to go through once we compile all the information, especially on
Yeah.
about that client avatar?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. So it should inform so many things. It should inform your messaging. So if you think about your website, look at your website or marketing materials in context of that person. Are you speaking directly to them? Are you talking about their anxieties or pain points? So I think that's a good thing to audit once you have clarity. It also informs your outreach strategy. So like you said, if they're in a certain networking group or they go to a certain conference every quarter, go show up where they are. That's where you'll be able to engage with them in person. As much as we can avoid sending cold messages to strangers, let's do that. And let's actually get in front of them and meet them where they're at. It can inform your content. So when you're thinking about, if you're posting stuff on social media, think about topics that you consistently are hearing from your ideal clients. So if you're having 1 or 2 new business calls a week, or if you go to one of these conferences where you're with these people and there's a topic that keeps coming up, write about it and write about it from your perspective and what you would advise them to do. So I think it should inform everything really. And then the more you actually talk to that ideal client when you're on calls, I like to actually be upfront when I'm taking new business calls. I like to say, this is who I work with for the most part. And that will give me a good indication of whether or not that client feels like they're a good fit for me or not. So I'm pretty upfront about sharing. I tend to work with female founded agencies, and I tend to work with people that are, they don't have a lot of time. They need help putting focus towards business development. So you can actually reassure some of the people you're working with, like, you are the person that I look to work with. You're the person all my clients are just like you. And that creates a sense of ease in the prospect's mind that, this isn't the first time you're working with someone like me, and also checks the box that you're the expert. So hopefully that helps, but it really should inform everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything, but that's exactly what I've been doing the last month. And let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, give it 6 months or so of consistent activity. And I guarantee there'll be results. It just takes consistency. So don't give up. Don't be don't take lack of results at this stage as it's not working. You just need to give it more time and be consistent.
Amazing. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for your question, Michelle. We are at time now, which is so crazy. Time flies. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, Melissa, for just pouring out your expertise to us and answering these questions live in real time. We are so grateful for you.
Thanks everyone
anyone-
for joining.
Yeah, so grateful for everyone. If anyone has felt inspiration to potentially host an office hours of their own, feel free to submit these to the submission form I just shared in the chat. We love featuring our members. Thank you so much, Melissa. We are so grateful for you. And thank you everyone for being here today and asking such great questions. It's always so great to learn alongside everyone. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we will see you on the next event.